Today is an extremely special day. I feel so lucky and blessed to be here with Michelle Ragusa-McBain. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time. Just a couple days, I guess, before we're getting on planes to go to Women of the Channel East. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom today on the Fearless Female Leadership Show.
Thank you so much. I feel very lucky and blessed to be here with you, Sheryl. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to talk to you and to your followers and listeners.
I so appreciate that. I've been following you for a while and I really admire your work and your ability to, I'm not going to use the word balance, but to integrate your work and your family and just do an amazing job with both. But before we get into that, and before you share some of your nuggets of wisdom on how you managed to do this and do it so well, I would love to know, you know, when you were younger, what inspired you? Did you always think that you were going to be on this fast track to having an amazing impact in your career? And was there anything that happened, like anything or any people that either inspired you to greatness, or was there a challenge that you're like, I'm going to overcome that and that's not going to be me? So was there something good or not so good that fueled your fierce motivation to keep climbing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I like to say to my daughters who are 9 and 7, no rain, no rainbows. Meaning that I think that that question is interchangeable. A lot of times, the inspiration that you have or receive in life does come from the obstacles or challenges that you overcome, and it makes you who you are. Really, these challenges can really shape you as a person. And for me, my story is a little unique, probably to some people listening, but maybe more familiar to some that would be surprised by it. So I'm happy to share it because I think representation matters, and it talks a lot to the listeners out there to understand who I am as a person and what my experience or journeys have been that have brought me here. And if anyone out there is listening and can relate to it, I would love for you to reach out to me and let's talk about some of those things. But Going back in time, my grandparents, 3 out of 4 of them immigrated to America. One grandmother I have was Native American, but she was given up for adoption. And so they came to America pursuing the American dream. It was really about opportunity, and they were entrepreneurial and they were gritty and they had a lot of passion to start their own businesses, but they didn't have a lot of mentorship. They didn't have a lot of education, and they didn't have a lot of money. So at a very early age, my grandmother got very sick at a time where women didn't get sick. And she was very depressed. My grandfather cheated on her with 6 children. She didn't have money for food. She didn't have money for a lot of things. He would turn the heat off on them in the winter. He was very cruel to her. And she went to a doctor. She had suicidal thoughts, and they put her in a mental institution because at a time where women were not allowed to be depressed and mental health was not a conversation of topic. And my grandfather, rather than help them and rather than support them, took all 6 children and left them on the steps of an orphanage. So my mother and her 5 brothers and sisters, for almost 2 years, lived in an orphanage. One, the baby, was taken into foster care, but the older sibling, my uncle Sam, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, my first dance actually, and he did not he ran away. He basically went state to state till he got to California, and they flew him home. So the rest of them, the younger middle siblings, stayed in this place. And my great aunt Anna, my grandmother's sister, she said she fought for the state to keep them all together because it was uncommon at that time to foster multiple children. But she worked at Pfizer's pharmaceutical at a time where women did not work. And her husband was a truck driver, my great uncle Joe, and they couldn't have children. They had miscarriages and they had stillborns. And they said to my mom and to her brothers and sisters, God didn't give us enough children, but they gave your grandmother enough to share, your mother enough to share. So she took all of those children to live with her, and they gave them a wonderful home, and they were inspiring leaders and mentors to them. And when my grandmother got better, and better by that I mean enough to be free to have her children back and not be judged by the state. She was able to take them home. And unfortunately, my mother met my father at the age of 13. And I say unfortunately because everybody has their own situations and trauma that they might experience. But my father lived in a home of domestic abuse, and my
Mhm.
mom thought she could help him. She thought she could change him, and she could not. So she married him at 23. By 24, he was abusive to her. They got divorced. And my mom went to a domestic abuse shelter with me because she didn't have a place to go. So I and my mom, from a very early age, I was raised by three very strong women who taught me that the biggest challenges in life could be the biggest opportunities, and you can't control the destiny that you receive, but you can control how you react and respond to it, and you can always hope for a better tomorrow. And my mom taught me at a very early age, Michelle, I want you to have a wonderful life, but you have to be self sufficient, you have to be independent, and you have to have the ability to do anything that you set your mind to. I believe that you can. But she really wanted me to go to college. And nobody in my family had done that yet. I had straight A's, but I thought maybe I don't need to, for whatever reason, because you need mentorship. But
Mhm.
I was the first in my family to go to college. I was the first to get a bachelor's degree. I was the first to get an MBA. And I'm the first to work in technology for close to 2 decades now. And I have not always had an easy climb. I had a lot of imposter syndrome along the way, feeling like I came from a lower socioeconomic background. I came from very blue collar entrepreneurs. I did not come from a white collar technology
Mhm.
background. When I went to college, a lot of my peers were, their parents were doctors or lawyers or engineers. They knew they wanted to become a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. I joke, I didn't know anyone who knew anyone who worked in technology. So it wasn't the immediate thought for me. And it was actually a lot of the people that influenced me in my life were the people that gave me an opportunity and a chance to prove myself and to help me and to mentor me. And one man, Lou McElwain, I met him at an alumni dinner. My first roll out of college, I had a lot of different ideas on what I would do. I was pre med for a while, I was pre law for a while. When I tried to apply for the Navy, but I had a heart condition and I was rejected. I applied for the Peace Corps and they bombed the embassy I was supposed to go to. And so I didn't have a real role of what I was going to do. I went to work on Wall Street. I did that for a bit of time. And then I didn't love it. I kept having a recurring nightmare. I was going to lose all their money. And
Yep.
my boss at the time said, "Well, it's not your money." And I said, "I can't sleep at night with that answer." So I wanted a career of purpose. I wanted a career that I felt like I was truly making an impact on the people and the company and the environment and the world. And so technology, where you truly do change the way the world lives and works and plays and learns, became very appealing to me. And a man named Lou McElwain, who was an area vice president of Cisco at the time, told me about the program that they had. Well, first he said, "Could you sell me a router?" And I said, "I don't know what a router is, but if you teach me, I'll sell you 3 of them." And he said, "I like you." And he said, "I can teach you those things. We can teach you fundamentals, but you can't teach that, that drive or that resiliency." And that was something that really came of my life experiences generationally, that I decided that I would not take no for an answer and I would be able to persevere.
Mhm. And I just want to pause for a second. And what we call, my Jewish grandma would said, you have a lot of chutzpah.
Mhm.
Um, and I just want to really highlight something you said, because you were asked a question, can you sell a router? You're like, I don't know what a router is. And a lot of people would stop there and just say no.
Right.
And so, I think that is a determinate and something that separates really the best from everyone else. And that the people that are most successful, they're not necessarily, some of them are very smart, but that's a component, but I don't think it's the most important component. It's kind of looking kind of fear in the face and saying, okay, this could be scary, but let's go. Like, move forward.
You have to be able to pivot, right? I mean, things happen, change happens, obstacles happen, and you have to be able to adapt and overcome and rise up. That's such an important, and change is scary. It's very scary to many people. And the ability to not know everything, which is something a lot of women struggle with. They have to check all the boxes before they apply for that perfect job or before they take the jump to the next level. And the truth is, not everybody knows everything. The president of the United States of America has never been president when he enters into that role. There are learning curves on the job, and we have to give ourselves some grace in some of those areas.
Yes. Yes, I'm just going to reiterate what you just said because it is so important that we do not need to have all the boxes checked. There is a learning curve. And if it's something, to pay attention to your gut and your heart and just be willing to go for it. Now, I like to think that in the last 20 years and for women in technology, we've made some progress. So I think pretty sure I can say that that statement is true, but it's probably also true that we have a little ways to go, or a little or a lot of ways to go. So what was it like for you as a woman in technology? And was it a straight shot, to all of the recent success that you're having? And by the way, congratulations on your nomination at the Women of the Channel conference for the gala. That's super, super amazing. And you've been getting a lot of recognition lately, so I don't want that to go unnoticed.
Thank you.
But can you let us know, was it a straight shot or were there some challenges?
The easy answer is, of course not. It's never a straight shot. It's so easy. It looks so easy externally sometimes, right? I think a lot of people early in career, I looked at people and I never saw the failures or the obstacles in their journey, right? It's very hard to perceive those things. So I like to live a life of authenticity because I think it makes it relatable for our listeners to understand that there's a place for them and there's a potential opportunity for them and there's a path for them. And for me, um, getting into tech, I will say that process to get into that program was very competitive. There was 800 people for every one spot that applied globally. And you had to have 3 phone interviews to get flown in person, to have 3 speed dating interviews. And if all of those people did not agree, you were not hired. And so it's very competitive and very, nerve wracking because you're in a room with your peers that are fighting for the same position with bells going off and having you go to the next seat. And I remember my phone interviews went great and I got flown out. And then I had 2 in-person interviews that went fantastic. And the final person, and I'll never forget, he looked at my resume and he laughed, like out loud, scoffed. And I think partially, if you look at my resume, maybe a lot of people had time to intern or do some things. I had a single mom. We did not have a lot of money. I worked 2 to 3 jobs while I had a presidential scholarship and straight A's and joined almost every activity you could possibly imagine, from cheerleading to student council to on and on and on. But I also um, I was very passionate about putting my work in and being a well-rounded student and still making money. And so if you looked at my resume, it probably didn't depict what some of those people walked in on paper looking really good at. But I knew that I had the potential and I knew that I had the resilience and I knew if somebody gave me a chance, I would not let them down. And so getting your foot in the door early in career is one of the biggest challenges a lot of our youth experience upon graduation. And oftentimes you see job seekers and talent acquisition going to the same type of places, right? If you're going to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, you might be missing impoverished youth or lower socioeconomic backgrounds or people that have a lot of talent and potential, but they don't have the opportunity. They're not invited to the dance. And so I would challenge everybody listening to look at where you're hiring from, because if you want diversity, equity, and inclusivity, it has to come from a well-rounded background. And that's not just men and women, that's the broader spectrum of who you could be hiring and who you could be employing and who you could be including. And so when he laughed, he said, "I don't think you're cut out for this." And I said, "I think you're wrong. And if you give me the opportunity, I'd like to prove it to you." And so we went through the rest of the interview. And at the end, I said to him, "Do you think I'm the right fit for the role?" And he said, "I think you were right when you didn't take no for an answer." Now, what I didn't know is I happened to have the talent acquisition person mixed up my resume and put me on the engineering day, not the sales day. And he said, I think you would have been perfect for sales, but you're here on engineering day. And now I think you could do either job. So you tell me what you want to do, and I'm going to hire you for it. So I actually chose to go into engineering at first. I got all of the certifications. And then I decided I'm more of a sales personality. And so I went into sales, and then my life kind of evolved from there. But it wasn't a ladder climbing up the rungs of success. It was more of chutes and ladders, right? There's lateral moves, and there's leaving a company and coming back to a company and taking a different role. But a few things come to mind in that, which is really, I thought very early on, if you work really hard, people just notice and they promote you. So when the job rec comes up, you put your resume in, and they're delighted by all of the hard work you did. But the truth is that most of the times those jobs are being filled before that rec is even posted, right? Because there's a bench that people have, that they're evaluating, that they're grooming, that they're leaning in on. And are you on somebody's bench? Are you having a champion? Do you have a champion when you're not in the room that says, you know who you need to hire, you know who you need to know, so and so? They're phenomenal at X, Y, and Z, and it would be our loss if we didn't put that person in that position. If you do not have that person, and that's very different than a mentor. And in our industry for women, we talk a lot about mentors, and that's fantastic. But we also need to talk about those champions and sponsors, because those are the people that are going to get you that job. And it's not just that simple. And so I didn't learn that very early on, but I did learn it as I evolved in my career. And I think probably for the last few roles I've been in, wasn't me applying, but me getting tapped on the shoulder to take an opportunity, or to consider an opportunity, or to interview for an opportunity. And either because I was recommended strongly by somebody that they value the opinion and trust, and or they've worked with me and saw my potential. And so I would say for everybody listening, that's probably the one homework that you really have to do, is think about who your mentors are, who your champions are, and who your sponsors are. And you should have many. You should be greedy with them. And they should be different types of people with different backgrounds and different life experiences and different roles that you aspire to be in, or that complement what you're not good at. Because we all have superpowers, and we all have things we can learn from one another as well.
Yeah, that's so important. Or even things that you're interested in. I love that so much, and knowing the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. Sponsor someone who's really going to go to bat for you when you're not in the room. So, maybe if we can give out a little homework, for anyone listening who's, it's just really finding that person. And maybe it's the person that you would think never in a million years, or maybe you're a little trepidatious about asking, but they might just say yes. And so when we talk about building work-life integration, we're talking about myths here. The first myth was, if I put my head down and work hard, I will be rewarded. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of times men end up getting roles, not because they're better or more qualified. They probably are qualified, but they're probably more visible, because it seems like they're a little bit better about getting the word out. But then, so I'm glad that you brought that up. But another myth is that, we can achieve work-life balance.
Right.
And so that's most definitely a myth, as we know, is like mothers. And so can you talk a little bit about how you've achieved a work-life integration? What does that mean? And, how do your kids, Callie and Brooklyn, feel about all of the amazing stuff that you're doing? And how does it impact your work and your family? And how are you doing that so well?
Thank you. And I don't think anyone does it perfectly all the time. So give yourself grace if you're listening. And especially if you have young children, or even if you have aging parents, or even if you just need more time for your own self-care and mental health, you deserve to have breaks. Your role is not who defines you, right? You are a multifaceted individual. If COVID taught us anything, we got to be let inside people's homes. We met their spouses, we met their dogs and cats, we saw their children running in the room. their elderly parents coming in the room, and you saw all of these components that make you who you are. And we're not just one piece. You're not the VP of global channels. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I have a lot of roles in my life, a lot of hats that I wear that are very important to me. I build relationships personally and professionally. That's probably the most important thing I've ever done. And the most important tip I can give anyone listening is to invest in the relationships and the people that matter. Never burn a bridge. And really, truly, the grass is greener where you water it. And so there are times where this scale is not even. To your point, it's not balance, it's integration. There are times where you have to spend more time at work, on the road, in meetings. There are times where you have to say, I'm sorry, I have my daughter's recital. I have an important birthday celebration to attend. I have a sporting event that I need to be at. There are times where you're going to make hard choices. And there are times where you're going to have to say no. And there's some guilt that gets involved in that, especially as your children get older. I've done a lot of events. There's about 218 events a year in the channel. I'm gone probably 60 events a year, if that, maybe sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the day, week, month, year. The fall, for whatever reason, and I can't control what every person and every vendor chooses to do, but tends to be the most consolidated section of events in our industry. And so back to back to back to back, you're gone, gone, gone. I have one more event next week with you at the New York City Women of the Channel East, and I'm very excited about that. And then a little break for rejuvenation and family time and the holidays, which I look forward to. But I also think that during that time, which is very important to me as well, spending time with my partners, doing our outside in listening at Sonic Wall, understanding what keeps them up at night, learning how great my team is, or if there's some improvements that we need to make. All of those things are very important to me. And the time, the presence, and the relationships I build with my partners is very paramount. But also, I have a young daughters that are home, and sometimes they say, "Mommy, you're leaving again. Where are you going? I miss you." And sometimes they cry, and you feel terrible because you don't want to miss the opportunity to be with them or to lean into that relationship. And so, what I would say to them, I actually did this. They were guilting me one particular day, and I had just got back from a place where I went to build it live, and I did a presentation on being an authentic leader. And it was so impactful. So many people came back to me afterwards to tell me about it, and I was very honored by their feedback. And in my slides, I talked about my journey. I talked about being a leader, and I talked about women and our place in technology and in different industries and how we get paid less money than men, 77 cents to the dollar if you're a white woman, less if you're African American, 65 cents, 55 cents if you're Latino, etc. I talked about, how there's more men named John that are CEO than women CEOs, just the name John. Talked about a lot of
I did not know.
so there's some fascinating tidbits, right? I talked about AI and how things are being built in where you think about Siri or Alexa. You ask them to add to your grocery list, or you ask them to budget or manage your calendar, but you ask Watson to do independent thought leadership or the lawyer app to talk about. And so there's almost gender bias being built in, and 70% of the people building the technology are white, homogeneous men. And so we have groupthink that can occur because there's a lack of diversity getting built into that. And so as you go through that concept and the principle, I show them the slide about women make less money. And at 7 and 9, they go, "What? That's so unfair." And I go, "I know." And I show them, and they said, "What? I can't believe that." And I said, "Here's a picture of our executive leadership team meeting at Sonic Wall. And do you see Mommy? There's 2 women in that picture, and Mommy's one of them. And we're going to grow that number because we need more and more women." And we did. Of course, as we brought in the leadership team, was 50 women that came into that picture. And so as you look at the company and the people, I said, I want you to know that mommy doesn't work just to buy you toys, which is what my husband said to them facetiously once, just joking around. I said, mommy works because she's good at what she does and she loves what she does. And because she wants you to know that you could do anything you set your mind to. And the world is your possibility. And I want you to know that. And I want you to believe that. And I want you to know, like my mom taught me, that you can do anything you set your mind to.
And Michelle, I so appreciate you're speaking to the choir, because you're living proof that that's true. I have the honor of working with so many other incredible leaders. I've seen it. You're speaking words of truth. You're not even speaking words of truth. You're living words of truth. And I am so grateful for you sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to continuing to follow your journey.
Thank you so much. It's been my honor and my pleasure to share with everyone, because I do believe that we all have a unique opportunity in this life to help one another and to pay it forward. And I wouldn't be here 20 years later if it wasn't for incredible women like yourself and all of the many mentors and women and allies that I've had in my career and my journey. And I couldn't even name them all. There's so many, truly. And if I think back to that and I think about the reason I was so candid and open in today's call is because there's somebody out there listening who's thinking that they're not good enough, or they're not the right person, or they're not able to do something. And I want them to know, and I want them to hear me when I say, yes, you are.
Yes, you are 100%. And Michelle, again, you're proof and you're living proof. And also, you're put so much hard work in. You're such a mentor to your daughters, and not just a mentor, but also a fierce champion to so many other women. Thank you again. Best of luck for the Women of the Channel Gala. I will be cheering you on, and I can't wait to hear your session on the 5th.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.